welcome back to Bengal Bites, your home for real, raw, unfiltered talk about the Cincinnati Bengals and the NFL. I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 9. This is the Week 2 recap episode. In this episode, we're going to break down the Bengals' home opener against the Baltimore Ravens. If you're brand new to this podcast, check out episode 0, where I explain more about why I'm making this podcast, who I am. But basically, I'm a lifelong football fan, football player, and I wanted to make a podcast to share with you the Bengals experience this season and give you an in-depth analysis from my perspective. As always, this show is not sponsored by anything or anyone. I don't work for any media conglomerates. Nobody's telling me what to say. I don't have any offer codes for free bet. I don't know any ways to save by bundling your home and auto car insurance. None of that stuff. I'm just here for giving you pure, concentrated Bengals analysis. So if you're a Bengals lover and a podcast lover, this show is for you. I don't ask anything from you, the listener, other than the fact that you subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast, either on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Google. I've even got a video version up on YouTube. It's still audio only, but still working out what to do with the video. But if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, all that stuff. I'm not going to sell you any merch at the end of this. Just tell your friends if you like this podcast, and maybe somebody else will like it too. In our last episode, episode 8, we did a preview of the game against the Ravens. The biggest takeaways from the previous episode was that the Bengals needed to be on the lookout for a few key players. On the Ravens offense, it was Lamar Jackson, number 8, the quarterback. Number 4 is Zay Flowers, the new wide receiver gadget player that they drafted out of Boston College. And then on defense, number 0, Roquan Smith, the inside linebacker, and number 6, Patrick Queen, the other linebacker. Those two were going to be the key players for the Ravens defense. In this episode, episode 9, we're going to do a complete breakdown of the game against the Ravens and go beyond the stats, beyond the number grades and letter grades, and actually talk about what happened play by play throughout the game. Anything interesting that happened. I'm not going to go through all the boring details, but sometimes I feel like a lot of the analysis of games is very superficial and too overly focused on the quarterback play. And so if you didn't watch the game, you won't really have any feeling for what happened. You'll just understand who won and who lost and how did the quarterback play, but you won't understand what really happened in the game. So I want to give everybody an experience from a fan perspective, like as if you were there, as if you had watched the game from my perspective. So let's get into this Week 2 matchup against the Ravens. Coming into this game, this was, for the Ravens, the third time in the last 4 games that they would have played the Bengals. Their last 2 games of the 2022 season were against the Bengals at Paycor Stadium, and they lost their playoff game to the Bengals on the fumble in the jungle Sam Hubbard return. So the Ravens were coming in looking for revenge for the end of last year. The Bengals were trying to get their season started. They lost probably the worst game of Joe Burrow's career. Definitely the worst game of Joe Burrow's career and of Zach Taylor's career probably. Completely outclassed, destroyed by the Browns in Cleveland, Battle of Ohio. Nothing like a swift kick to the gonads to get the season started off right as a Bengals fan. We had come off such a high. The day right before, the Saturday before the game, Joe Burrow has his press conference of signing his new record-breaking contract extension. And then we go into the game the next day, and all of the excitement and enthusiasm from the contract immediately evaporated out of the stadium. So the Bengals were looking to get back on track in this game. But they knew the Ravens were going to be a tough opponent. All the teams in the AFC North are going to be tough. But Ravens with a healthy Lamar Jackson is always going to be scary. And the Bengals have not had good success against Lamar Jackson specifically. Coming into this game, the Bengals were 1-5 against Lamar in his career. They had not had very much success against him. But throughout the week, we heard positive news about all the Bengals players in terms of health. All the Bengals players were ready to go, healthy. Joe Burrow was still listed on the injury report with his calf, and a couple other players had some minor injuries, but nothing major. Joseph Osai was not able to get back into the lineup for this Week 2 matchup, so maybe Week 3, he's still out. The Ravens did have a number of starting players who were out for this game. Their center, Tyler Linderbaum, their left tackle, Ronnie Stanley, their free safety, Marcus Williams, and their best cover corner, Marlon Humphrey. All four of those guys were injured and not able to play in this game. So from a Bengals perspective, you'd think they would have the advantage because they have the healthier roster. They have more starters, in theory, more better players available to play in the game. So going into this, the Bengals were favored by 3 points at all the different sports books. And usually the sports books give the home team a 3-point advantage. So by giving the Bengals a 3-point edge, they're saying basically it should be an even match. If it were on neutral soil, the two teams would be even. So I got up Sunday morning with all kinds of anticipation. First of all, I don't know if anybody is an F1 Formula 1 fan, but Singapore Grand Prix was on Sunday morning, and that was the first race that Red Bull had not won all season. Max Verstappen won like 10 races in a row. It was getting completely boring. Finally, somebody else, Ferrari, won the race. So that was interesting. But I go on YouTube and look for Trags and James Rapine doing their pregame videos to show what's going on in the stadium, and weather looks good. It's warm, it's sunny, not a cloud in the sky, so we don't have to worry about rain or precipitation ruining the Bengals passing game. That was the big story from Week 1, and that was kind of the thing that the players and coaches blamed it on, was didn't adjust to the elements well enough. We weren't expecting the elements apparently and got completely blindsided by the rain and didn't adapt quick enough on the fly. Somehow the Browns, they turned the sprinkler system on up in Cleveland and got the jump on us on that one, but not this time, Ravens. Clear skies, bombs away for Joe Burrow and the Bengals, or so we thought. The first thing CBS showed coming into the game was A.J. Green, ruler of the jungle, up on the platform, leading the Who Dey chant with all the fans in the stands and getting the crowd all pumped up. So the crowd looked like it was a sellout. Everybody was loud, ready to go. Of course, you play Welcome to the Jungle for the opening kickoff. Love that. So it felt like football was back for real for Bengals fans. Bengals won the opening coin toss. They decided to defer till the second half, so they kicked off to the Ravens first. Ravens got a first down on their first possession, then 1st and 10 at about their 36-yard line. Lamar Jackson goes back to pass. Nick Scott, Bengals number 33, the strong safety, comes on a safety blitz off of the Ravens' right side, Ravens' right edge. So it's where Lamar is kind of turned when he's looking to pass. He sees Nick Scott and just steps completely out of the way. Nick Scott misses entirely, doesn't even get a hand on him. And throughout the game, I saw Nick Scott and Dax Hill not able to make those plays on Lamar in the backfield. And after the game, it kind of made me think, this is their first time playing against Lamar, whereas we had Jesse Bates and Von Bell. Not that they had a ton of success with Lamar either, but the first time you see a player like that, maybe you're not quite familiar with how he's going to move, and you can see it on tape, but there's no way to duplicate it in practice or anything like that. So hopefully the next time they play against him, they'll do better. But on this play, so Lamar dipped out of the way of Nick Scott. Then he saw Sam Hubbard right in his face, so he jumped out of the way of Sam Hubbard. Nick Scott tried to come back again. Lamar got away from Nick Scott for the second time on the same play. Ended up getting about 4 yards on the play after making a few more moves. But it was just obvious right from that first play. It was like, whoa, Joe Burrow can't move like that. And that would be something that was just solidified throughout this game, is how limited Joe Burrow's mobility is. In the first game, we could see that he wasn't moving as much, and he was from the shotgun every single snap, so he didn't have to move anywhere. But we were thinking, well, maybe the footing at Cleveland, it was a little bit sloppy and wet up there, so maybe that's why he wasn't scrambling around and moving quite as much. But in this one, pretty much the same deal. He didn't move at all. He would just catch the snap and throw it within 2 seconds. And at this point, I would have to say that out of all the quarterbacks in the NFL playing right now, Joe Burrow has got to be considered the least mobile starting quarterback out of the 32 teams. I can't think of one that has a less mobile quarterback. Since Aaron Rodgers doesn't play for the Jets anymore, I mean, even somebody like Dak Prescott for the Cowboys or Jimmy Garoppolo for the Raiders, if you watch them, they're not fast in a straight line, but they're still able to move and navigate the pocket up and down, get out of the way of those blitzers, and find the throwing lanes to be able to throw. Joe Burrow is not able to do that right now. He's not able. He may be able to run a little bit in a straight line, but he's really not able to move side to side, get out of the way of the blitz, find the windows to pass in. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's stick with the Ravens' opening drive. A little bit later in the drive, Bengals look like they're going to bring 5 people on the blitz, but then they drop Trey Hendrickson back into that kind of spy 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, just watching wherever Lamar goes. But Trey Hendrickson doesn't really cover anybody, so it's just an easy pass to Mark Andrews. On this drive, Lamar is 5 for 5. It was a well-designed, probably scripted by their new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, but very clinical. It looks very easy for the Ravens to move the ball all the way down the field on the Bengals defense. Especially there was one big play, Gus Edwards' run up the middle where the Bengals interior defensive linemen, Zach Carter and Josh Tupou, just got parted like the Red Sea, completely out of the way. And then Logan Wilson ran himself out of the play, so he missed the tackle in the hole. It was like a 20-yard run up the middle before anybody even touched Gus Edwards. Nick Scott ended up having to make the tackle 20 yards down the field, and that's what you don't want. And unfortunately, there was too much of that throughout this game, is safeties making tackles like 10 yards down the field, or linebackers tackling guys 5 or 8 yards down the field instead of defensive linemen stuffing up the holes and making stops, tackles for loss. I can't remember too many tackles for losses in this game. Later in this drive, we saw a defensive holding penalty on Cam Taylor-Britt, where he was holding Zay Flowers, getting a little grabby at the top of the route, and that's understandable because Zay Flowers is pretty much unguardable. He's too quick, too fast for anybody to guard him. That brings up 1st and 10, and I didn't see this live, but oh my goodness, I feel sick to my stomach watching Mike Hilton get rocked on this play because he came down to try to blow up the run. The Ravens ran a sweep out to the right, and the Ravens right tackle, Morgan Moses, he just annihilated Mike Hilton. It looked like Mike Hilton ran into a telephone pole or something. He just crumpled to the ground. I felt bad for Mike Hilton and his family and next of kin, because Mike Hilton is not the biggest guy. He throws his body around, but this is kind of becoming a liability for the Bengals. Mike Hilton may become a liability in the run game if he's not able to get off of blockers like that. Then I'm noticing Ravens have more success running on their right side over Sam Hubbard, where Mark Andrews, the Ravens tight end, is able to one-on-one seal off Sam Hubbard, and they run right around his hip. So that's not good for our defensive end to be getting blocked by a tight end one-on-one and losing. We need to have better containment and better holding the firm edge on the run contained by Sam Hubbard against the tight end especially. I could see if it was maybe a tackle or he's getting double teamed, but if you're the defensive end, you got to be able to fight off the tight end block. Ravens eventually punch it into the end zone with a run on the left side, pulling behind Kevin Zeitler, the former Bengals first-round draft pick. He's their Ravens right guard. He pulls. They also have Patrick Ricard, their fullback, on the play to lead block. The Ravens on this whole drive look like they just out-muscle, out-man, out-physical the Bengals defense. Overall, I would say they have the weight advantage. Like, they just have bigger guys. They have Mark Andrews, Patrick Ricard, even the tailback, Gus Edwards, is like 235 pounds, which is bigger than all of the Bengals defensive backs by at least 20 pounds. So The Ravens on offense have the weight advantage for sure, and they seem like they're pushing the Bengals defense around a little bit to begin with. This Ravens first drive lasts 13 plays and takes almost 8 minutes off the clock. 7 minutes left in the first quarter is when the first time Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense are able to take the field. They get a short pass to the right to Tyler Boyd. It's kind of just a drive starter, get a little rhythm and tempo going into the game. Get a short gain, get a good feel for it. Second down, Joe Mixon picks up a good gain. It looks like it's going to be a first down, but it's called back because of a holding penalty on Alex Kappa, the right guard, number 65. And, it was a holding penalty because they called it. I know a lot of fans are going to be complaining about how the Bengals got screwed by the refs in this game, and you're not going to get every call. Yeah, there are some calls that go against you. There are also some calls that go for you. So you just got to win the game on the field and not complain about the referees. But that holding penalty set them back to 2nd and 14. They got another pass to Tyler Boyd, who made a tough catch. He got somersaulted in the air and hit by two guys. Hung on to it. So then that brought up 3rd and 8. And Joe Burrow made a pretty good pass to the right sideline. They had Irv Smith going up the right sideline. He was split out wide for some reason. And it was a cover 2. So Burrow was trying to hit that hole shot where you hit it in front of the safety behind the corner. Unfortunately, the ball was a little bit on the sideline. Irv was able to catch it, but he couldn't get his second foot in bounds. It's hard to say whether the ball should have been maybe a little bit more inside, but it was good enough that the Ravens defender wasn't able to get over and get a hand on it. If Irv could have caught it and stayed up on his feet, he maybe could have scored a touchdown. So it's hard to say if the ball was bad because it hit him right in the body. He just wasn't able to get his feet in bounds. So it's a tough catch. You'd like to see him get those feet in, but unfortunately that's a 3 and out for the first drive for the Bengals. So the Ravens drive it down, 13 plays, almost 8 minutes, score a touchdown. Bengals go 3 and out on their first drive, punt it away. It's a 39.5-yard punt by Brad Robbins. Fair catch on the return. It's good that there's no return by Brad Robbins. He's getting a lot of fair catches and no returns, but 39.5 or 40 yards on average is what he's been averaging all season. That's even through 2 weeks. That's the lowest average punting distance in the league. So I'm questioning whether it was really necessary to draft Brad Robbins if he's going to be the shortest punting kicker in the league. We'll have to see because, the rain last week and the 10 punts, that I'm sure cut back on his punting abilities, but so far it's looking pretty short in terms of distance for Brad Robbins. So after the Bengals punt, Ravens take over at their own 33, 1st and 10, and the Bengals show press man. Cam Taylor-Britt is guarding Odell Beckham Jr. on the Ravens' right sideline. He shows like he's going to be in press man coverage, and then at the last second, he bails out and backs off like he's going to play the deep third. So he's bailing out, but he bails out so much, he leaves a huge cushion for Odell Beckham Jr., who just runs like a quick, short slant route. Lamar Jackson throws it right to him, 15-yard pickup before Cam Taylor-Britt can make the tackle. And it's like, that's way too easy. You don't want to get beat deep, but you don't want to give guys just like an easy 15 yards. That's one thing we saw from Cam Taylor-Britt, even going back to last season, where he didn't get beat over the top too often on like real deep pass go balls or fades or anything. He was pretty consistently breaking those up, but we saw he would consistently give up easy catches, short yards, short pickups on a regular basis. Like the completion percentage against him on short to medium range passes is probably pretty high. So he doesn't necessarily have tight coverage in those short balls. We want to see him break up some more passes and not give up first downs every pass. But it was on this play that we saw Odell Beckham Jr. get up and kind of look at his ankle a little bit after he got tackled. He was able to stay in the game and came back, but this was a story that we saw play out later on in the game. Ravens ran a couple more plays, picked up a first down. Then, at one point in this drive, Andrew Catalon, the announcer for CBS, says, "Play action Jackson." I thought that was a cool sequence of words. Everybody should say that every time Lamar Jackson runs a play action pass. Say play action Jackson. On the play action, he had Nelson Aguilar had a step on Cam Taylor-Britt in the end zone, but he overthrew everybody, threw it out of the back of the end zone. So no touchdown on that play. Ravens ended up settling for an attempt at a Justin Tucker 59-yard field goal, which was wide right. No points for the Ravens on that one. Bengals take the ball back. Bengals get the ball back at about midfield after the missed field goal. 1st and 10, run out of shotgun. Every play is out of shotgun again this week, so it's run up the middle to Joe Mixon for 1 yard. So it's 2nd and 9, pass to Jamar Chase out to the left. It's a good play by Geno Stone, the Ravens safety, number 26. He makes a open field tackle on Jamar Chase, one-on-one. Everything else was blocked up, and I guess the Bengals are thinking, okay, we trust Jamar Chase one-on-one to break the tackle of the safety. In this case, he's not able to do it. Ravens make a good tackle, brings up 3rd and 9. On 3rd and 9, Bengals have trips to the right. Travion Williams is the 3rd down back in this game. Travion stays in to block the defensive end and then releases out late. Joe Burrow, I can't tell if it looks like he had already predetermined he was going to hit the check down. Just his body language and the way he was reading the field didn't look like he was trying to really push the ball to one of his receivers down the field. So he hits Travion in the right flat. Patrick Queen, like a cheetah, leaps on Travion before he can even take half a step. He gets like 1 yard. So Bengals have to punt after another 3 and out. And that's going back to the Browns game. That's so many 3 and outs. It's like the 8th or 9th 3 and out of the season. I'm really not sure about the offensive design. If they thought that they wanted a matchup between Travion Williams and Patrick Queen, and they thought Travion Williams was going to win that battle, that's a battle that I don't like for the Bengals, because Patrick Queen is an elite athlete and Travion Williams was like a 5th or 6th round draft pick. So I'm going to put my money on Patrick Queen, like the Ravens did. But also in that situation for the Bengals, you have to ask, why are we not throwing it to Jamar Chase or T. Higgins or somebody who has more explosive abilities? Ravens run a couple run plays to run out the first quarter. First play of the second quarter, Lamar Jackson goes back to pass. There's a little bit of pressure from Trey Hendrickson, and he's able to strip the ball out, cause a fumble. Looks like the Bengals are able to recover, but there's a penalty on the play. Zach Carter, number 95, the defensive lineman for the Bengals, is called for an illegal hands to the face penalty. And, I mean, it's an obvious call. Some of the people on the announce crew were like, I don't know if that's illegal hands to the face. But Zach Carter had his hands up under the face mask of the offensive lineman for the Ravens. So definitely was a penalty. And it wiped out the fumble. So that would have been a huge play because that was deep in the Ravens' own territory. So if the Bengals could have recovered that ball with, a short field, that could have been easy points right there. But as it turns out, things ended up working out pretty well for the Bengals because they were able to force the Ravens to punt after a couple short plays. They punted away. Charlie Jones gets it at his own 19-yard line, and the blocks are well set up by the Bengals return team. Charlie Jones makes a guy miss, breaks it up on the left sideline. All he has to do is outrun the punter, which he does, but during the return, we see a flag basically fly right by Charlie Jones. So it's very obvious, this is coming back, blocking the back, holding something. You don't see a long return and a flag flying out and, this is great news. So everybody's assuming the worst. It's not going to count. But Charlie Jones, you almost thought he was going to maybe stop running, but luckily he kept running into the end zone, scored. But he even said, afterwards, he was pretty sure it wasn't going to be a touchdown. The referees got together, talked about it, picked the flag up, touchdown is good. So it was kind of like this delayed reaction touchdown. Everybody was all like, oh, no touchdown. Oh, yay, touchdown, yay. But the thing about it, Charlie Jones said that he thought that it wasn't a touchdown, so he didn't even get the ball. He just gave the ball back to the referee, went back to the bench, figuring that it was just going to be the offense is going to take the field. he didn't even really get to fully celebrate and like do a dance or anything on the field. He thought it was just no good. Now, the call that was kind of questionable on this punt return was Andre Iosivas, number 80, the wide receiver from Princeton. He was coming down and blocking the Ravens gunner, and he made very light contact with the back of the gunner, but it wasn't really a block. It was just kind of like the gunner was running, and it wasn't really what you would call a block. So it was good that the refs picked up the flag and got together and picked it up. But it could have gone either way. And that's my point about when people complain about flags going one way or the other. You could have very easily said that was a block in the back on Iosivas and have brought that touchdown off the board for the Bengals. So I feel like the Bengals were fortunate that they were able to keep that touchdown. And that kind of made up also for the penalty on Zach Carter, hands to the face, that would have given the Bengals the ball deep in Ravens territory. Well, they scored a touchdown on this punt return anyway. And I do have to admit, Charlie Jones, he gets his first career punt return for a touchdown, first career touchdown. I was dogging on Charlie Jones for last week because, I mean, he did run sideways all the way across the field. It did look ridiculous. But he said he went in the lab and he was watching the Pac-Man Jones tape. The last Bengals player who scored a touchdown on a punt return was 11 years ago, 2012, and it was Pac-Man Jones. No relation to Charlie Jones. But he said he was looking at the old film of Pac-Man and watching how he would just set up the blocks, set up his picks in the return, make one cut, and then go. We saw a little bit of that Pac-Man in Charlie Jones. Hopefully he can keep that going throughout his career. If we got another Pac-Man Jones in Cincinnati, I'd love it. But he's got his own nickname, Chuck Sizzle. So Chuck Sizzle scoring his first touchdown in his second career game, got to give him props. And I got to give special teams props for that return. Charlie Jones did have to make one guy miss, but after that, all the blocking was set up for him. There was nobody there. So great job by Darren Simmons, the special teams coach, and all the guys on the punt return unit to get that block set up. Charlie Jones did the hard part, I guess, of scoring the touchdown, but everybody else did their blocks too. And somebody asked Charlie Jones, they were like, oh, we haven't seen a punt return for a touchdown in 11 years. That's pretty amazing around here. What do you think? And Charlie Jones was obviously like, well, this is my first year on the team. I don't care if you guys had a punt return last year. This is my first touchdown, so I'm going to celebrate it. But obviously, given the results of the offense for the Bengals in the last two games, getting any points, especially their first touchdown of the year, is a positive. But the downside or the negative aspect of that is because they scored the punt return, the offense didn't get on the field. The defense for the Bengals didn't get a chance to rest at all. So they've been playing pretty much the entire first half. They have to come out onto the field again for another drive against the Ravens offense. And this kind of fatigue is definitely setting in on the Bengals defensive linemen, and they're not able to get any kind of a pass rush. There's really no pressure on Lamar when he drops back to pass. These guys are just kind of standing there playing patty cake with the offensive linemen, not getting any pressure. 1st and 10, Ravens complete a deep pass over the middle to Nelson Aguilar. Nick Scott makes the tackle after the first down, but he comes up a little bit shaken up. Looks like he's maybe holding his shoulder or neck or something, but he goes into the blue medical tent and he comes out, and Jordan Battle comes in for a few plays. The Ravens continue driving the ball down the field, running it. Some of the Bengals defensive linemen are complaining about getting held, but I don't see anything that's too egregious. We do see a couple instances where Justice Hill gets tackled by his brother Dax Hill, the Bengals free safety. They show the clips of the two brothers in their pictures when they were little kids. Then the Ravens have 2nd and 2 at the Bengals 45. Dax Hill comes off a safety blitz on the right side again, doesn't get home. Lamar is able to get it out to Zay Flowers in the right flat, and Zay Flowers, the receiver for the Ravens, breaks the tackle of the Bengals cornerback number 22, Chidobe Awuzie, and is able to break outside for another first down. A couple plays later, Ravens have 3rd and 3 at the Bengals 27, and on this play, DJ Reader, the Bengals nose tackle, number 98, he's going up against Kevin Zeitler, the Ravens right guard, number 70. DJ Reader takes his left arm and completely bench presses Kevin Zeitler with one arm and just does like a post move. So he's just posting him out and creating space, making sure that Kevin Zeitler is not able to get in and engage and start holding him and grabbing him and moving him. DJ Reader just holds him at bay with one hand, walks down the line of scrimmage until there's some interference, the center, some other players. So DJ Reader is able to get off Kevin Zeitler, make the tackle in the hole, stop the running back before he can get the first down. Pretty much 1 yard gain, so it brings up 4th and 2. Ravens have to settle for a 44-yard field goal, which Justin Tucker is able to make this time. So that brings it to 10-7, Ravens on top. At this point, Bengals get the ball back with about 9 minutes left to go in the second quarter, and the Bengals offense, this is only their third possession of the game. So they had 2 punts and then punt return for a touchdown. So this is only their third possession. I think it was around this time of the game where the CBS broadcast showed the number of Ravens first downs compared to the number of plays the Bengals had run. And I think the Ravens had more first downs than the Bengals had run plays. Bengals take over 1st and 10 at their own 25. Burrow, he's still in shotgun. Every play, again, is in shotgun. And they're going very spread offense, 4 and 5 wide. Even when they have a tight end on the field, a lot of the times the tight end will be split out wide to the sidelines or in the slot. So they're trying to spread out the defense, make the Ravens cover more ground, I guess. What happens on the 1st and 10 is Burrow tries to throw it to Tyler Boyd, and it goes into the Ravens defensive tackle, Brent Urban's head. So Brent Urban's like 6'7". He's just standing in the passing lane. Burrow tries to throw, it goes straight into him. I'm surprised that he hasn't had more batted balls because, like I said, Burrow's not really moving. He's just catching the pass, or he's catching the snap from the center, standing in one position, looking for his receiver and throwing it. So as a defensive line, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to get in Burrow's throwing lanes, knowing that he's not going to be able to move around and adjust. Just come straight at Burrow, and if he's not able to throw it, he's going to throw it into you. We'll have to see what other teams do going forward. Then we see Bengals run one of their most successful plays of all season, which is the getting a defensive pass interference penalty. So Jamar Chase gets held down the left sideline. They pick up a penalty and a first down. Then we see one of the few good runs for Joe Mixon on the day where it looks like the Bengals just caught the Ravens in a bad defensive alignment. They were able to audible, give the ball to Joe Mixon on the left edge, and he just outran Patrick Queen to the sideline because Patrick Queen was for some reason he was cheating to the right, and then the Bengals ran it to the left. So they must have just seen that the defense was playing him in one direction and ran it the opposite direction. Good audible by the Bengals. They were able to pick up the first down, but it's too bad they couldn't do a little bit more of that. Then we see 2 completions in a row to T. Higgins on 2 excellent routes. If you go back and watch this, these are some of the best routes I've seen T. Higgins run as a pro, and that's to be expected. He's been in the league for a few years now. So the first pass, he runs basically a hitch on the left sideline, but he makes it look like a fade to the hitch. So he takes 3 steps, and then he looks like he's going to break it off to the fade outside for just a couple steps to make it convincing, and then he immediately plants his foot in the ground and stops. Burrow hits him for about a 6 or 7 yard gain. Then that brings up, I think it was 3rd and 2. T. Higgins is on the right slot this time, and he runs basically a quick curl. It's about an 8 yard curl, but the way T. Higgins runs it, he stems it up 5 yards, so he takes about 3 or 4 strides, and then he does a quick stab to the outside with his shoulders and his eyes to make the defender look like maybe he's going to run a corner route, basically run 10 yards and break it 45 degrees to the sidelines. But instead of that, T. Higgins sits down real quick, just breaks all his momentum down in 2 steps and stops, turns around for the quick hitch. The defensive back trying to guard T. Higgins just falls completely on his back, like he's trying to guard somebody in basketball and got crossed over. It was like one of those N1 mixtapes. That's what T. Higgins did to this guy. Bengals wind up with 1st and 10 at the Ravens 14. Then on 1st and 2nd down, they run basically the same play where they try a swing pass to the right side to the running back. The first time they try it to Joe Mixon, and he gets about 1 or 2 yards before Patrick Queen runs him out of bounds. Next play, basically identical play to Travion Williams, swing pass to the right side. Again, Patrick Queen runs Travion down for a minimal gain, so it brings up 3rd and 5. I don't know why the Bengals were trying to test Patrick Queen. That's at least the third play where they tried a swing pass to the running back where Patrick Queen has stopped the running back for minimal gains. I don't know if they forgot he was on Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase's LSU national championship team, and he was a first-round pick overall. But Patrick Queen may have some of the best closing speed of any linebacker in the NFL. So I don't know why the Bengals thought that this would be a good idea to try to isolate him one-on-one in the open field. Didn't work out for the Bengals in this game. So that brings up 3rd and 5 at the Ravens' 9-yard line. They try a pass to the right, one-on-one, Jamar Chase in the corner of the end zone with Rock Ya-Sin. Basically a back shoulder fade. Burrow doesn't put a lot of air under the ball. It's kind of a low pass, but it's good enough to catch. It hits Jamar Chase in the shoulder pad. He's able to get his hands around it, but Rock Ya-Sin puts his right hand, in between Jamar Chase and strips the ball out before they come and hit the ground. So it's an incomplete pass. You don't hate that call. If you have to go to anybody, you want to go to Jamar Chase. You want to give the ball to your playmakers and give them a chance to score touchdowns. So that's what they did. Just Jamar Chase couldn't come down with it in that situation. We've seen him make that catch in the past. We've seen him drop that catch in the past. So it's one you can live with. You want to score a touchdown there, obviously, and maybe scheme up a better play. But Jamar Chase one-on-one with the cornerback. If we can't get it, I'll live with that. So Bengals aren't able to punch it into the end zone from there. They don't go for it, so they go for the field goal. 27-yard field goal is good. That makes it a 10-10 tie game with 3 minutes left to go in the first half. That was one of the most successful drives the Bengals had up to that point in the season. 12 plays, 66 yards, almost 6.5 minutes off the clock, but it only ends in a field goal, not a touchdown. So the offense to that point still had not scored an offensive touchdown, only Charlie Jones. Ravens get the ball after the touchback. Bengals, again, send a safety blitz, so they have been not getting much pressure with their defensive linemen, so they're having to send safety blitzes, Nick Scott and Dax Hill, but they're not getting home. They're not getting to Lamar Jackson and bringing him down. And again, in this situation, Dax Hill comes off of the defensive right, offensive left edge, and Lamar Jackson is looking that way, so he sees the blitz coming, he pump fakes, and Dax Hill doesn't even get a hand on him again. So it's somehow Lamar is playing, he's so good against the Bengals in the blitz, he's not even getting touched. He's able to get away from Dax Hill and do a shovel pass to Justice Hill, who picks up 8 yards. With the benefit of having all 3 timeouts and the 2-minute warning, the Ravens drive down the field on the Bengals. Lamar makes some plays with his legs. He's able to scramble, pick up some yards, gets a first down, and then the Ravens receivers find open spots in the Bengals zone across the middle of the field. Mark Andrews and Nelson Aguilar just run like 10, 15-yard digs or curl routes. Just sit down in open spots in the middle of the zone. Lamar is able to sit back in the pocket, not get any pressure, find the open receiver, and make an easy completion for easy first downs. So after the Ravens pick apart the Bengals' soft defense over the middle of the field in the zone, Ravens have 1st and 10 at the Bengals' 18. Lamar gets what's looked like sacked and loses yards, takes him a little bit further, makes the field goal a little bit further for Justin Tucker. But Cam Taylor-Britt gets called for illegal contact in the end zone. Bengals fans are losing their mind and talking about how the referee should be fired and investigated for this horrible call. Okay, yeah, the call was not a good call, but it really didn't make any difference in the outcome of the game in the end, because the Ravens right after this got 2 holding penalties to move them back 20 yards, so they had like 1st and 30, and they didn't end up getting a first down, didn't get a touchdown, had to settle for a field goal. They probably would have got a field goal either way. So all these Bengals fans who are like posting this clip of this terrible penalty, so what? Relax. It didn't have any impact on the game at all. Move on with your life. Whatever. I'm not going to tell people how to be a fan. You can be a fan however you want. You can complain about whatever you want. I'm just saying, I get sick and tired of people complaining about the referees or trying to make excuses for why the team is not winning. You just got to look in the mirror sometimes, be realistic. I think that's the better way to think about it, is just be realistic with yourself, have realistic expectations, and not assume that you're going to win every game, get every call, and win the Super Bowl every single year. You're just setting yourself up for disappointment. So to open up the second half, Bengals receive the kick. 1st and 10 at the Bengals 25. Joe Burrow feels a little bit of pressure coming up the inside, has to do a hop. So he has to jump and pull his right leg, his injured calf, up out of the way of the defender, scramble out to the left, and pick up 5 yards before he gets out of bounds. And he is able to get positive yardage, but even on this play, I would not say that Joe Burrow is running like he normally would. He looks like about 70 or 80%. He looks like one of the guys who's calling the game right now, Matt Ryan. He looks like, if you remember Matt Ryan trying to scramble, that's what Joe Burrow looks like. So not very fast at all. We saw a nice hard run by Joe Mixon to pick up the first down on 2nd and 5. And then on 1st and 10, they line up Jamar Chase in the backfield next to Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon. And they fake the handoff to Jamar Chase around the back and then throw it to Joe Mixon going out of the flat on the right side. He's wide open. He's able to pick up a good 20 or 30 yards before he gets pushed out of bounds. So that was a good creative play call. One of the first little bit of misdirection we've seen from the Bengals all season. Jamar Chase did not get any running carries in this game. And you got to wonder, he's not getting too many targets down the field. Maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea to give the ball to Jamar Chase on an end around, speed sweep, something like that, just to get him involved in the offense a little bit. After a couple plays, Bengals get 3rd and 1. This is the only play that I can find in this entire game and the past 2 games that Joe Burrow has been under center. So every other play, he's been back behind Ted Karras, the center, about 5 yards, catching the snap out of shotgun. This is the first time that I've seen Joe Burrow go under center. And what's weird about this play, or it kind of makes sense, is when he goes back to drop back to pass from out of center, he hits his back plant foot and goes to throw, and it looks like his right foot kind of gives out on him and rolls over. So he kind of falls, does like a fadeaway throw instead of planning and driving off of his back leg. The ball is behind Irv Smith, so he has to come back for it and make a tough catch to grab it and pick it up and make the first down. But it was just a weird sequence for Burrow. Maybe that's why they don't want him under center, is because it's so difficult with his calf injury for him to move that foot around. He's not able to do that as well as he normally would. And on that same point, that made me think about if Joe Burrow is not able to truly plant off of that right back leg. This is when you're a right-handed quarterback, your right leg is your plant leg. That's where you're going to generate all your power. If you imagine like a baseball pitcher, that's going to be the leg that you put on the rubber to drive off of when you're pitching. If he doesn't have a solid foundation, a solid base, he's not going to get a lot of power on his throws. Maybe that's why we haven't seen a lot of success and a lot of deep pass attempts from Joe Burrow in this offense so far this year, is because maybe he doesn't think, or the coaches know that he's not able to physically throw the ball with confidence and accuracy down the field and really put a lot of velocity and power into it. Bengals end up with 2nd and 8 at the Baltimore 17. Bengals go back to pass. Joe Burrow is looking over the middle. He's looking pretty much dead down the middle of the field. Throws a pass into the end zone for T. Higgins that gets intercepted by the safety, Geno Stone. He's filling in for Marcus Williams. Geno Stone runs it back to about the 38-yard line for Baltimore. I think he could have had a pick 6, honestly. If you watch this replay, there's nobody even close to Geno Stone. The only person who even had a chance to make a tackle was Joe Burrow, and he got pushed out of bounds by one of the Ravens' defensive linemen. He wasn't making the tackle, but for some reason, Geno Stone just ran out of bounds on his own. This is what annoys me so much about some of these players. Don't go out of bounds on your own. Obviously, I didn't want the Ravens to score a pick 6, but if you're a football player, don't just run out of bounds without somebody pushing you out of bounds. He could have scored had a touchdown on this play. So for all you kids out there, don't not score a touchdown if you're able to. Score touchdowns. Stay in bounds. That's what Charlie Jones did on that play. That's what Xavier Gibson did for the Jets on the punt return. Stay in bounds. Don't just run out of bounds. Maybe that's going to be my new saying. Stay in bounds, score touchdowns. Anyway, it didn't really end up mattering in the end because the very next play, Lamar Jackson drops a bomb on the Bengals defense. He threw a deep pass to Zay Flowers that probably traveled about 60 or 65 yards in the air. Again, not the type of passes we're seeing out of Joe Burrow. And Lamar Jackson throws this completely flat footed. If you go back and watch this, it's amazing. It's not like he winds up and puts like his whole body into it. He's just kind of standing there completely flat footed and then just unleashes a 65-yard laser down the field. Ravens run a couple more plays and they end up scoring a touchdown with a pass to Mark Andrews, the tight end, number 89, in the right flat. Dax Hill is there, but he's just not able to bring him down quick enough. Part of the reason is Mark Andrews probably outweighs Dax Hill by about a good 60 pounds. So Dax Hill has got the speed, but he doesn't have the size to take down a player like Mark Andrews in short yardage. So after the touchdown and the extra point, that makes it Ravens 20, Bengals 10. Very costly turnover. There's about 8.5 minutes left in the third quarter. The Bengals, they had the ball, and it was 13-10 at the point that Joe Burrow threw that interception in the red zone. So they could have potentially gone ahead or at least tied the game if they got a field goal. Instead, now they're down by 2 scores. Instead of taking the lead, they're down by 10. So a huge play in the game. Can't make that kind of turnover if you're Joe Burrow. He knows that you got to win the turnover battle, especially when you have a chance to score points. And we've seen that, unfortunately, from Joe Burrow in the last couple of seasons. He's thrown turnovers. He's given the ball away in the end zone. I specific like the Jets. I remember he's trying to throw. I think it was the Jets. He was trying to throw to C.J. Uzama, got picked off. Maybe it was the Steelers, but there's been a few plays where Joe Burrow has thrown red zone interceptions. At this point in his career, you got to expect him to see that. It would look like 2 high safeties. T. Higgins was running kind of a post over the middle. Joe's got to see the safety sitting there on the back hash and not throw it there. Bengals get the ball back. 8.5 minutes left to go in the third quarter. 1st and 10, they run another swing pass to Joe Mixon out in the right flat for a 0 gain. At this point, the fans are letting Zach Taylor and the Bengals have it with boos, and the announcers say they can't really blame him. Like, 1st and 10, you get 0 yards on a swing pass that they've been running all game, and it hasn't been working all game. So it's really getting frustrating to see the offense really kind of not make a lot of progress initially. However, Bengals overcome that slow start, and they complete a pass to Jamar Chase on the left side where he picks up 7 or 8 yards, breaks a tackle or two, and then they run about a 10-yard out route, basic out route to Jamar Chase on the right sideline, picks up another 1st down. So they keep the chains moving. Then it's on this drive, we see Joe Burrow and the Bengals start to work the middle of the field, kind of like the Ravens did to the Bengals at the end of the first half. Bengals, Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins both catch a couple passes over the middle in the deep, soft part of the zone. So something we hadn't been seeing the Bengals work, especially in the Browns game, where all the passes were going out to the outside towards the sidelines, away from the middle of the field. Now the Bengals are finally working the middle of the field, and that's probably because Browns were going all man coverage one-on-one, whereas the Ravens are playing a little bit more zone coverage instead of man-to-man, since their cornerbacks and safeties are not as healthy as the Browns were. So maybe that's why, but it's surprising that it took this long for the Bengals to find the soft spot in the Ravens defense. Better late than never, I guess, but they're still down 10 points by this point. Bengals pick up a roughing the passer penalty against Joe Burrow, gets them even closer to the goal line. They try a pass to the left corner, back corner of the end zone to Tyler Boyd, who's kind of running a bench route. Tyler Boyd is looking over his left shoulder, and then he has to swivel around and look over his right shoulder as the ball is in the air and get his feet down and make the catch. It's not an easy catch, but the ball goes right through Tyler Boyd's hands and just drops onto the ground. So you could tell all the people in the stadium were excited, and then everybody got real quiet because they knew he dropped it. But luckily, next play, T. Higgins catches the ball in the back corner, left corner of the end zone, where Joe Burrow just throws it up. He's the bigger guy. It's just like a basketball alley-oop to T. Higgins. He's 6'4". The other guy is probably like 5'10". Pretty easy catch for T. Higgins. Bengals get the extra point. That makes it 20-17 Ravens. Ravens get the ball back with about 2.5 minutes left to go in the third quarter, and 1st and 10, they kind of set a demoralizing tone for the Bengals since they were all kind of pumped up, just scored a touchdown to T. Higgins. First play, Gus Edwards runs up the middle for about 20 yards and a first down, so that takes a little bit of the steam out of the Bengals crowd. On these kind of runs, you're wondering, where are the linebackers, where are the defensive linemen making the stop at the line of scrimmage? It's like Dax Hill coming up and making another tackle 20 yards past the line of scrimmage. So the Ravens' offensive linemen and tight ends and backs are doing a good job of blocking up and covering up the Bengals defenders so they're not able to make tackles. Ravens continue to drive, but they get a holding penalty on Kevin Zeitler. That brings up 1st and 20 after a short pass to Justice Hill, loses 3 yards. 2nd and 23, Lamar Jackson throws a pass to Mark Andrews over the middle, who catches it. Nick Scott tries to come up and put his shoulder into Mark Andrews. And again, Mark Andrews probably has 50 pounds of weight over Nick Scott. So the impact doesn't go in Nick Scott's favor. He ends up getting injured on the play. And I've seen that on a number of plays where Nick Scott tries to come in and put his head down, put his shoulder in, and almost spear the guy he's trying to tackle, put a big hit on him. And Nick Scott, twice this game, has kind of ended up worse for wear. So he may want to rethink his strategy about tackling guys. He doesn't want to make tackles like that and put his body in a precarious position. I don't know if it was this play or another play later in the game. It might have been another play where he got injured and had to be evaluated for a concussion. I wouldn't be surprised if the concussion happened when he was trying to hit Mark Andrews and then he tried to stay in the game and then eventually came out, because this looked like maybe the bigger impact. But there were a couple plays where Nick Scott was taken into the blue medical tent in this game. We're going to have to see if he's going to be able to go in week 3 and beyond. If Nick Scott's not able to play, then Jordan Battle, number 27, the rookie, was the one who filled in his place. Eventually, the Ravens have 3rd and 5 at the Bengals 17. Bengals look like they go zero coverage or press coverage across with a blitz, but the Ravens pick it up and Nelson Aguilar beats Chidobe Awuzie to the corner. It's just a perfect pass from Lamar Jackson. He drops it in the bucket over Cheeto into Nelson Aguilar's hands before Cheeto can even react. And he was close, but not close enough to even do anything about it. Pretty easy touchdown, but perfect throw by Lamar. Really almost unguardable. After the Justin Tucker extra point, that makes it Ravens 27, Bengals 17, with about 11.5 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. Bengals take over after the touchback. Short run to Joe Mixon. Then on 2nd and 5, this is one of the few pass plays, where Joe Burrow doesn't throw the ball in about 2 or 2.5 seconds. This is one of the few times where he holds onto the ball, doesn't like what he sees in coverage in the pass routes, and tries to make something happen. Unfortunately, Jadeveon Clowney is coming off of the right edge, beats Jonah Williams around. He kind of dips underneath Jonah Williams, sacks Joe Burrow, so that takes him back about 6 yards. Then on the next play, Ravens bring a blitz, zero blitz. They're bringing everybody. Joe Burrow is able to get the pass off to Irv Smith, but unfortunately Irv Smith can't break out of the tackle of the Ravens safety, Kyle Hamilton, number 14. So that brings up 4th and 5 for the Bengals, and they opt to punt from their own 30. So it's 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Bengals are down by 10. It's 27-17 Baltimore. 4th and 5. In the end, again, this is hindsight. Bengals were down by 2 possessions with 10 minutes left to go. They down by 10. They ended up only getting the ball back one more time in this game. So no matter what they did, they would not have won the game. So in hindsight, they should have gone for it just to give themselves a chance to get another possession. As it turned out, they just statistically, mathematically, didn't have enough time to score enough points before the end of the game. So Ravens took over at their own 31 with 9.5 minutes left. They ended up going 3 and out and punting back to the Bengals. Ravens punted away from Charlie Jones. This time he's like Devin Hester or somebody. The Ravens got to keep it away from Charlie Jones. So the Bengals get it on the 20 after the touchback. At this point in the game, the Bengals are down by 10, and there's 7.5 minutes left to go in the game. So the Ravens are kind of playing more of a soft coverage, playing off. They just don't want to give up a big touchdown in 1 or 2 plays. The biggest thing for the Ravens is letting time go off the clock. So they're okay to let the Bengals get some yardage, get some first down, as long as they're taking time off the clock. That's good for the Ravens. So maybe because of that strategy by the Ravens, the Bengals are able to drive all the way down the field. 16-play drive takes a little bit over 4 minutes, and they end up scoring a touchdown. So that's good. The only thing that negative about this is on the last play, Burrow scrambles out to his right, throws a touchdown to T. Higgins in the right corner of the end zone. But then when we see the camera pan back to Joe Burrow, he's kind of limping and hobbling off the field onto the sidelines. So it's like, oh, sweet. Now it's 27-24. Bengals are only down by 3 points. But now Joe Burrow is limping, and you're like, oh no, Joe Burrow has re-aggravated the calf injury that kept him out of all of training camp, and we had been so concerned about going into this game. CBS cameras on the sideline showed Joe Burrow grimacing in pain, and he's got this Theragun pulsating massage gun that I guess is supposed to stimulate the muscle fibers or whatever, but there's no way that giving this calf muscle a massage in the couple minutes you have on the sidelines is going to really heal anything or do anything. At that point, maybe you can rub it out a little bit to just get a little bit loose, but he was really working that thing. Like he thought like maybe it was just a knot or a cramp or something, but it's like a pulled muscle and a cramp are two different things. You just got to let that thing recuperate and rest up. Ravens ended up getting the ball back with about 3.5 minutes left to go in the game, and they were able to run the ball, get enough first downs, run out the clock. Cincinnati used all their timeouts, weren't able to stop the clock, and the Ravens were able to just kneel and win the game. Ended up being 27-24. Ravens win by 3. Bengals got that last-minute touchdown. They had been down by 10. And when you consider that they got that punt return for a touchdown, the Bengals offense really only scored 17 points in the game. Maybe a little bit closer looking on the scoreboard than it felt when you were watching the game. It felt like the Ravens had control of the game throughout. They led the game the entire way. The Bengals didn't have the lead at any point. So you never really felt like the Bengals were in control. They had opportunities to take the lead, so you felt better than the game against Cleveland where they were just completely getting blown out for most of the game. At least they hung around, they stayed in it, they kept it close, and if there had been a little bit more time, maybe they would have been able to do something. You kind of felt like on the Ravens' last drive, though, they were just moving it at will on the Bengals. So if they had needed another score, you'd think the Ravens could have put up more points also. Because of the better second half by the Bengals offense, the statistics don't look totally lopsided like they did in the first game. The Bengals got 19 first downs in this game to the Ravens' 26. Probably the biggest discrepancy was between the rushing yards. The Ravens had 178 rushing yards on 37 attempts. Bengals only had 66 rushing yards on 15 attempts. So in terms of yards per rush, Ravens had 4.8 yards, Bengals had 4.4 yards per rush, but the Ravens had more than double what the Bengals had. And that's the Ravens ran 70 plays to the Bengals 57 plays. Ravens had 9 drives, Bengals only had 7 drives. So the Bengals just didn't have the ball that often. And as Zach Taylor alluded to, the first question in his post-game press conference was, what do you think the difference in the game was? And he said, turnover battle. Can't throw red zone interceptions. And that's definitely true. The Ravens did not have any turnovers because that fumble that came against Lamar Jackson was negated by a Bengals penalty by the illegal hands to the face by Zach Carter. Bengals defense was not able to force any Ravens turnovers. Ravens were able to pick off Joe Burrow that one time, and that ended up being the difference in the game. In terms of individual statistics, if we compare the two quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, I would have to give the edge to Lamar in this one. He had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks. Joe Burrow had 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 sack. Lamar, obviously, he has the better mobility, even on a good day for Joe Burrow, but especially when Joe Burrow has that calf strain, it's going to limit his mobility and what he can do even more. That gave Lamar the advantage in terms of running the ball and also being able to create passing opportunities with his legs. That's the thing is, Joe Burrow is so restricted in what he can do because he can only throw within 2 seconds or he's going to get hit. And that means the Bengals receivers have to get open in 2 or 3 seconds or else Joe Burrow's not going to be able to throw him the ball. So it just compresses everything into the Bengals offense down into a very tight window. Everything is on very thin margins. And if Joe Burrow were able to move around a little bit, that would give the Bengals receivers more time to get open, get separation from those defenders instead of having to get open immediately. That being said, T. Higgins did have a good day, 8 receptions on 12 targets. So last week he had no receptions on 8 targets. This time, 2 touchdowns, 89 yards with a long of 20, so a much better day for T. Higgins. On the opposite end of the spectrum, though, still kind of a quiet day for Ja'Marr Chase. Only 5 catches for 31 yards on 8 targets. Ja'Marr Chase, obviously he's going to be the focal point of the other team's defenses. They're going to double team him most plays. But still, 31 yards is not enough for a stud like Ja'Marr Chase. Got to figure out a way to get him more involved in the offense. Like I said, either through handoffs, shovel passes, screen plays, something. We got to get the ball in Ja'Marr Chase's hands because he's our most explosive playmaker. But the big 3 receivers all did fairly well in terms of production. We had Ja'Marr with 5 catches, Tyler Boyd with 6 catches for 52 yards on 8 targets. And as I mentioned, 8 receptions for T. Higgins, 4 receptions for Joe Mixon, 2 for Irv Smith for 10 yards on 4 targets. So far, we have not seen a whole lot out of Irv Smith. Like I said, he had that one pass up the right sideline that it looked like it could have been a good completion if he could have gotten both feet in, but couldn't break away from Kyle Hamilton on that open field tackle play. Need to see more out of Irv Smith. We also want to see more out of Travion Williams. Travion is doing a good job in terms of pass protection, keeping Joe Burrow clean, not getting hit in the pocket. But playmaking ability, I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe it's a thing Travion can prove me wrong like Charlie Jones did. So hopefully Travion listens to this podcast, hear me calling him out. Travion's going to score about 3 touchdowns next week. On the defensive side of the ball, the leading tackler was Dax Hill, 11 total tackles, 9 solo. If your free safety is your leading tackler, that is never a good sign. We also saw Logan Wilson with 10 total, Jermaine Pratt 9, Nick Scott 9. So the 2 linebackers and the 2 safeties were the leading tacklers for the Bengals. Not a great sign for the defensive linemen. You want to see them making some more tackles, showing up in the stat line a little bit more. We only saw Sam Hubbard 4 tackles, B.J. Hill 3, D.J. Reader 2, Trey Hendrickson 2 tackles. No QB hits. Not only did the Bengals not get any sacks on Lamar Jackson, they only hit him once, according to ESPN. Sam Hubbard had 1 hit, whereas the Ravens got 5 QB hits on Joe Burrow. Then the special teams game, I'm not sure. I guess you could say we won because Charlie Jones had that 81-yard punt return. That's an automatic win. Punting, like I said, you don't want to get a punt return for a touchdown. Brad Robbins is punting very short. He had 3 punts for 120 yards, average of 40, but no return yards. So he's always getting fair catches, but they're only 40 yards. Brad Robbins is kind of like a double-edged sword. No return yards, but not very much punting yardage. On the other hand, Jordan Stout, the Ravens punter, he's punting it like 60 yards, but that lets Charlie Jones return it better. So I guess I'd take Brad Robbins. But still, if you look at the statistics, he's the shortest punting punter in the NFL right now. I don't know if that was worth the draft pick. 6th-round punter for shortest punts ever. I don't know. We're going to have to see if the Bengals have to make any moves at punter. There's tons of free agent punters just waiting to get called up on the practice squads of other teams. Brad Robbins is going to have to get a little bit more distance. I don't know if 40 yards is going to cut it. After the loss in the post-game press conference, Zach Taylor was talking about how they just didn't have enough offensive possessions to score enough points. They only had the ball 7 times, which is true. But I feel like Zach Taylor takes the easy way out and doesn't take ownership of the defense. Like, he just looks at things from a purely offensive minded, because he's basically the offensive coordinator, but he's also like the quarterback's coach. Whenever he answers a question, like he talked about, well, Lamar Jackson is just too good for us today and our defense just couldn't stop him. We got to find ways to stop him. But he never has any input. It doesn't seem like he's really influencing the defense at all. It seems like he just kind of lets Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator, handle everything on the defense and put it all into Lou's hands. But he doesn't have any input. I wish Zach would say, like, we need to do this better, we need to do that better, we need to do a couple things. It seems like he is completely hands off with the defense. But then for the man in the hour, Joe Burrow, nobody cared about what Zach Taylor had to say, as usual. Everybody wanted to know what was up with Joe Burrow and his calf. When did he hurt it? How did he hurt it? What does it feel like? Is he going to be able to play in the next game? The only thing he said was, it's sore right now. We'll just have to see how it feels tomorrow and the next couple of days. He didn't make it sound like it was that serious, but he said, you never know. We'll have to just wait and see. And he said that he was planning to go back into the game if the Bengals had been able to get the ball back. And they showed Jake Browning was warming up on the sidelines, but I'm sure Joe Burrow would not have let Jake Browning go back into the game. If there was a chance they were going to win, you don't want Jake Browning in there. You want Joe Burrow in there, even if he's only on one leg. Just do the Byron Leftwich at Marshall when he had the broken leg. Just have your offensive linemen carry Joe Burrow down the field on one leg if they have to. Prop him up, throw the pass, go on to the next play. No Jake Browning whatsoever. But also in the press conference, Joe Burrow did admit that he can't make that interception. He was like, Lamar is too good of a player, can't make that type of mistake against that type of a team, and he's just got to see that. I don't know why he didn't see it. I don't know what he was looking at. I'll have to go back and look at the All-22, but maybe it was missing training camp and not getting those reps in practice to make that mistake, realize he shouldn't be looking there. But you would expect at this point in Joe Burrow's career that he wouldn't make that type of mistake. You would hope that he wouldn't make that type of mistake. But hopefully Joe Burrow can learn from that moving forward. So it was a long night of waiting and anticipation until we heard from Zach Taylor on Monday in his press conference. And the Bengals play next against the Los Angeles Rams on Monday Night Football. It's going to be their whiteout game. It's going to be the Ring of Honor game when they induct Boomer Esiason and Chad Ochocinco-Johnson into the Bengals Ring of Honor. So it's going to be a big thing. One of the few primetime games that the Bengals have is going to be in Week 3. So they haven't yet announced whether or not Joe Burrow is going to be able to play. They asked Zach Taylor in the game. He said, it's too early to make any assumptions right now. We're just going to have to wait and see what the doctors say about the situation and play it by ear. When they asked, would Joe Burrow be available, Zach Taylor just kind of said, it's hard for me to say right now. So very non-committal about that. And I would assume that a lot of that has to do with the fact that they want to string out the fans as long as possible. They don't want to say Joe Burrow is going to be on IR for the next 4 weeks, so nobody buy any tickets. Go ahead and just tune out for the next 4 weeks and don't even pay attention. No, they have to keep you, the fan, entertained and engaged in buying tickets, buying merchandise, all that kind of stuff. So as far as they know, Joe Burrow is healthy and you should just keep spending money on the Bengals. It's really such a tough situation for the team and for Joe Burrow and for the fan base, but mostly for Joe Burrow because we don't know exactly what the dynamic was between the contract extension getting signed and this injury. I mean, they're not necessarily one-on-one related to each other, but you have to think, did the injury delay the contract being signed? And was there some kind of a stipulation that Joe Burrow has to come back and play to be able to sign the contract? I don't know. I'm curious, why did Joe Burrow play in these first 2 games and risk a setback, which he did end up having, when, okay, if we put in Jake Browning, we know we're going to lose all the games anyway. So we lost these first 2 games with a not healthy Joe Burrow. It would have been just as bad to leave Joe Burrow out, lose the 2 games with Jake Browning. At least Joe Burrow would be more healthy than he is now. That's the problem, is we've lost 2 games and Joe Burrow is even more injured than he was before. So what did we really gain out of that situation? We got a couple of games of a hobbled Joe Burrow, throwing to teammates. I think in the long run, they're going to wish that they had kept Joe Burrow healthy into the end of the season. Now, it's kind of like shooting ourselves in the foot because we lost the 2 games. If Joe Burrow has to sit or go on IR or miss multiple games in the middle of the season, we're probably going to lose those games too. So we're going to start off like 0-5, 0-6. That's a deep hole if and when Joe Burrow is able to come back and make it through the season. That's the other thing is, if he's constantly having re-aggravations, re-injuries throughout the season, he's not going to be able to play anywhere close to a full schedule. So then what are we really getting out of Joe Burrow? He needs to, in my opinion, shut it down until he's completely healthy. But obviously, the Brown family, the Bengals, don't want to do that because if they shut down Joe Burrow for an extended period of time, the fans are going to lose interest. They're going to say this season is a lost cause. They're just going to give up and not pay attention anymore. That's the last thing that the Bengals as an organization, as a money-making organization, want. So they're going to do everything to keep you engaged, even if they know that it's not in the best interest of Joe Burrow's long-term health. So that's a weird catch-22 that we'll have to kind of follow and see how that develops over the course of the season. Who is really pushing Joe Burrow to play? Is it Joe Burrow himself, and he's having this pride that he doesn't want to sit? Is the team making him play for money reasons? I don't know what's going on. But it's interesting. I don't know if we're ever going to hear the full story of it. But you can bet your bottom dollar Zach Taylor is not saying anything critical of Joe Burrow at all. He'll say, yeah, not a good throw, but, great defense by the Ravens. That was an amazing play by the Ravens defense to intercept that pass. But Joe Burrow probably should have said that. But great play by the Ravens. So we'll just have to stay tuned for at least the Wednesday press conference. I don't anticipate Zach Taylor saying anything. I mean, when does Zach Taylor say anything ever? But especially about Joe Burrow, he's going to keep it under wraps as long as possible. I don't anticipate them really making an announcement about Joe Burrow until they absolutely have to, maybe Friday or Saturday of this week before they say he's going to be officially out, if he is out. We'll have to see if he kind of makes some kind of miracle comeback and suddenly feels better. But the way he was hopping around on that one leg, it looks like he needs to be out for at least a few weeks, I would say. One person who's going to be out for more than a few weeks, La'el Collins, was released from the team this past week. In episode 4 of this podcast, I talked about who I thought was and was not going to make the roster. And I mentioned that I didn't think keeping La'el Collins on the roster made any sense given the amount of money he was going to cost. His salary was supposed to be for like $10 million this year. And given the injury that he had last year of tearing his ACL, MCL, PCL, and meniscus, I think it was in December or January, so very late into the year. That's a big guy. He's over 30, I want to say. I think, or he's 30 or close to it. He's got multiple knee ligaments torn, and on top of that, he was one of the worst offensive tackles in the NFL last year. So, big salary, horrible injury, and he wasn't even playing well. It made total sense for me to see him be released by the Bengals, and that's exactly what happened. The timing of it was a little bit odd, given that it was right after the first game. You don't know why. Why would they even keep him into week 1 unless they thought maybe they wanted to see if Jonah Williams was able to perform at right tackle for a game or two before they let LC go? But maybe it was something personality-wise, like maybe LC wasn't showing up to meetings or rehab or doing whatever the coaches asked him to do. Maybe he got into an argument with somebody. Who knows? It could have been a lot of different things, reasons why they wanted to let LC go at this point. But what it means is they're going to save $7 million off the salary cap this season and next season. So they could use that to maybe sign another backup quarterback this season or sign somebody down the stretch if they end up making it to the playoffs. Or they could potentially roll that into another salary next season on that salary cap. I think that is a good sign for the Bengals to get rid of LC. I don't think he was really going to provide anything of use realistically this season, so it's better to just cut bait with LC, get rid of him. There's some rumors that other teams are interested. I'll be surprised if another team picks LC up this season, but given the fact that there's so few good offensive tackles in the league, we've got Jason Peters signing with the Seahawks, I saw, and Dwayne Brown, even though he's playing terrible for the Jets, he's still out there making money, so I don't know if LC could be necessarily a whole lot worse than Dwayne Brown, so maybe he will get paid. We'll see. But the common thing that you hear throughout the locker room from Zach Taylor and the other players when they ask, what are you going to do to dig yourself out of this 0-2 start that you've started this season? They say, well, this is where we were last year. And it's obviously not where we want to be, but we're in the same place last year. And it's like, that's true, but it's not like they won the Super Bowl last year. I mean, yeah, they went to the AFC Championship game, but there was a lot of luck involved in them winning 10 games in a row, going through 3 rounds of the playoffs, and finally getting beat by the Chiefs. You can't really count on that year in, year out, getting lucky, basically. NFL is hard to win one game, much less multiple games in a row. So I don't think you can really count on just being able to string off 10 or 11 wins every season. The other thing I would say to argue against that kind of way of thinking of, oh, this is where we were last year, 0-2. Okay, yeah, you were 0-2 last year, but also 2019, where they started off 0-11, they started off 0-2 in that season too. So which one is it? You could say, yeah, we started off 0-2 and went to the AFC Championship game. Or you could say, yeah, we started 0-2 and ended up drafting Joe Burrow number 1 overall in the draft. We could either go to the playoffs or we could end up with a top 5 pick in the draft, depending on which way this 0-2 season goes. It could go a lot of different ways. So it's kind of weird that they're just saying, well, we're just assuming we're going to go back to the playoffs because we're starting off the same way as we did last year. They didn't say that last year when people asked them, well, you started last year and you went to the Super Bowl. They would say, nope, it's a different season, different team. Super Bowl was last year. That's in the distant history. We're forgetting about that. We're moving on to this year. Now they're all talking about, oh, last year this, last year that, blah, blah, blah. We'll have to watch how things develop throughout the week. Bengals have a tough hill to climb. The Browns and the Steelers played each other tonight. Nick Chubb had a bad injury. It looks like he's going to be out for at least the season. Browns and Steelers are both 1-1. Ravens 2-0. Bengals 0-2. So they're in last place in the AFC North. They're going to have a ways to come back. They got to get hot and hope that the Bengals don't have any injuries over the course of this season. That does it for the Week 2 recap. In our next episode, we're going to do the Week 3 preview for the Monday Night Football game against the Los Angeles Rams, the whiteout game at home. So hang in there, Bengals fans. It's on the way up. Nowhere to go but up from that Game 1. So hang in there with me all the way. We're going to stick with it through thick and thin. Just remember, hoo-day and stay hungry for more Bengal bites.